All right, and thanks a lot for joining us tonight. I'm just so excited to have these guys on here and basically just swap some stories about what goes on here in Indianapolis and just wholesaling in general. And I'm just really excited to, like I said, just have these guys on here because these are four fellows that I really respect. We all do business with each other. We buy and sell deals from each other all the time. We talk with each other. So it's just awesome to have these guys on here. So let me kind of go around the horn here real quick. Just let you guys kind of do a quick introduction of just who you are, maybe what your business is, and how long you've been doing wholesaling. So Clay, let's start with you, man.
Sure. Pleasure to be here, Brian. My name's Clay Manship. My brother Evan and I own Midwest Cash Offer and Mainstay Property Group here in town. Wholesalers, we used to flip stuff, not so much anymore. We buy and sell stuff pretty frequently, and most of the time it's from one of the guys you're looking at on this pretty screen of ours. So happy to chat. Thanks for having me.
So, awesome. Alain, how about you, man?
My name is Alain Perez-Majul. I've been doing business now about 3.5 years here locally, and my partner and I, Bob Heinrichs, we run Indy Investments. We primarily just wholesale, and on the personal side of things, we each do a little bit of buy and hold investing.
Awesome. Ben?
Ben Grise with Ben Buys Indy Houses and then investwithben.com. Same as everybody else on the call, buy and wholesale, buy and retail, and then cherry pick the ones for buy and owner finance and buy and flip.
So, awesome. And Will?
Yeah.
Yep. Will Hall, owner of New Paradox. And we're the same way. We wholesale about 60%. And then we do some rehabs and some buy and holds and some notes on the other 40%. So just about like everybody else. So thanks for having us.
Yeah. So
thanks, Brian.
So yeah, I'm excited for this. And so really what we've been having to be virtual for our meetup here for the last few months. And I feel like we put out some good content anyway. I know 2 months ago, our first one, I just interviewed Brett and got his story about kind of how he started the business and how he scaled it. Last month, we kind of broke into the top 10 questions that wholesalers always get or always ask, the top 10 things they know, that kind of thing. So I thought for this one, it'd just be I wanted to keep it a little lighthearted and really just kind of dive into just some stories. I know when we all get together and we're meeting up and we're sharing a beer or whatever, we just laugh because we always come across just crazy stuff that happens in this business, and it's always fun. So I thought it'd be kind of a cool thing, just kind of do that on here. So I'm just going to kind of throw out some questions and throw it over to you guys and let you guys just share some stories about kind of what you've seen from the indie market, from wholesaling, and just the craziness that can happen when you're wholesaling, the things you don't necessarily expect, the things that you don't hear about of hey, this could happen to you, and it probably will 5 times maybe, those types of things. So the first thing, what is one of the funniest things that you remember from one of the wholesale deals or just running into somebody or something like that? What's one of the funniest things that happened? I know one that sticks out to my mind when I think about this is one time I put out a property and it was over in the Lawrence area, and I never really looked at the pictures too much. I would just work on the dispo side. So I got pictures from the acquisition guys, sent out this property, and all of a sudden I started getting a ton of calls from this property, and they were all calling because there was a pig in the bathroom. So in the bathtub, everyone would know it was a pig. So
a pig in the bathroom, like an animal in the bathroom?
Yeah, like an actual pig was just in the bathtub, and so it was funny because I never got as many calls off the deal that people wanted to do, because people just wanted to know the story about what is up with the pig. The funny thing about this is Will is actually the guy that bought this property from us. But so it's all funny. It all works out. But
wait, did he buy it with the pig?
Yes, right.
I need to know what happened with the pig.
The tenants had a pig, Will. So what happened with the pig, man?
Yeah, bacon. A lot of bacon the whole house.
I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we bought it. It's still a good rental in Greenfield. But yeah, I remember it too. I'm looking through the pictures. You know how fast you remember that. I was like, what? Wait. I back it up.
You said it was in Greenfield, Will?
Yeah.
All right, it all makes sense now. No problem.
Did the pig sell you?
Yeah, I'm used to seeing that stuff in Anderson, But I can say that because I'm from Anderson.
So, what's another story that you just kind of remember of something that happened or just a funny thing that really sticks out with one of your deals, man?
So the funniest one that really came across was actually not too long ago with one of our acquisitions people. So we, our lead manager took the phone call, sent the lead over, and sent the address, all the information, the guy's phone number. So my acquisition guy calls him up. He's in California. He's like, yeah, it's a rental. I'm looking to get rid of it. Like, very matter of fact, this is what I want for it. Okay, well, we got to get it inside. He's like, I'll line up with my tenants, go there tomorrow at noon. My guy's like, all right, perfect, and so he goes there, at noon and knocks on the door and they were immigrants from some country. I can't remember what. They didn't speak very good English, and he's like, I'm here to look at the house, and there's like a 16-year-old girl, 17-year-old girl, and then her brothers and sisters, a couple other kids running around 6, 7, 8 years old. And they're like, okay. So they like let him in, right? And so he's in the house and he's just taking pictures and he's going through everything and he's doing the pictures. There's no adults there. It's in summertime, and so there's no adults there. So he goes around, he's taking all the pictures and gets all that and gets it back and he shares it with me, and I'm like, well, that's not a bad house. It's a pretty good house for that price. I was like, shoot, why do I sell it so cheap? I'm like, so I'm like, all right, well, I think we should do it. And so the guy had some questions about something and he wanted to see the pictures of the house because he hadn't been inside it for a long time. And so my acquisition guy sends him the pictures. He's like, this is not my house. He's like, what do you mean it's not your house? He's like, this ain't my house. I don't know. So we had the address instead of like 493, 439. And my acquisitions guy went in there, walked this whole house with kids in it.
Stop.
And I'm just like,
it's better they let you in the house. They were like, yeah, come on in, no problem.
I know. That's what I thought.
They're all about it.
This is like crazy.
She bought that one too.
I mean, you imagine dad or mom walking in and here's this.
Oh my God.
They just like
this dude
taking pictures.
Walking around taking pictures. So luckily nobody ever showed up, but it is just kind of like, what a coincidence. And I'm just like, thank God the owner requested to see the picture. We'd have bought the thing. And we didn't end up buying the house because it was not the same house. It didn't look the same. I'm like, so that was kind of crazy how things line up when you walk into these houses sometimes. But yeah, so that was a good one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, man? You got a story that sticks out?
Well, my stories are seeming real lame compared to you guys now at this point. My favorite story, and I wish my guys were here to tell them. They tell them better than I do. But personally, my favorite. I guess I should back up. Everyone here has been doing this longer than I have, so I feel like I've got to compete with some of you guys' stories to mostest degree. But this is probably every year at our Christmas party, someone wins an award. I think. Anyway, they win an award for the best story, so it's kind of like a competition every year. And this is in 2019, so this is 4 days into the new year last year. It's like January 4th or 5th, something like that. And my most senior acquisitions guy goes out to this house and meets a seller, looking to sell a property. She's getting divorced and wants to liquidate pretty quickly. He goes out, he's walking the property, and it's super amicable, nice area out in Pike Township, just a nice, normal transaction. And he's out walking the property, and everything's good and great. And he turns the corner and sees a guy standing in the doorway, like full on, like ready to rumble. And he's like, excuse me, can I help you? And he says this guy reeks of alcohol. He's clearly messed up, and he starts getting in his face, talking about, this is my house. You're not going to take my house from me, yada, yada, yada. Well, come to find out, the divorce decree was finalized like a year and a half ago. And this guy had been living with his ex-wife just to make just to make ends meet for the time being. So anyway, this guy gets combative and just starts following them two around as they continue to tour the house. And so my guy says, hey, I'm going to excuse myself. I'm going to just go stand outside. You guys work yourselves through, and I'll be out in the front. Come grab me if you want me here in a little bit. And I will be damned if this guy doesn't walk out in front of the house and get in his face again and starts putting his hands on this woman, like, hey, you're not going to sell my house, push. And where my guys come from, that's not okay. And so he let him know that's not okay. And Mr. Drunk guy didn't take too kind of that. So anyway, there's a scuffle in the front yard. For not even the seller. This is the seller's ex drunk husband. And there's like a scuffle going on. It's all on video. It's hysterical. And anyway, so they call the police. It's all wrapped up. And they come back, and as they're arresting this guy, they go, "Oh, this guy again? Yeah, we were out here at midnight last night. Same story." And so this guy apparently just doesn't like people coming in the house. And needless to say, that won the best story of 2019, 4 days into the year last year.
That's crazy, dude.
He had that award wrapped up right out the gate.
It was disappointing, man. I think everyone else kind of looked around. It's like, well, shit, how am I going to beat that? There you go.
So, Alain, how about you, man? You got a funny story that sticks out to you?
Actually, no. On that one, I can definitely defer to the rest of the guys. I mainly have either cool stories or scary stories.
Let's tell a scary story.
Yeah. A scary story. All right. So for our business, we, most of the guys here have larger teams, but the business that Bob and I run is a little bit leaner, I guess you could say. So I handle all the front end stuff. When it comes to acquisitions, I'm all the front end on that, while Bob is the back end dispositions of all of our deals. So before, I was pretty much going to every single deal, every lead that came in, I was going to all of those properties. And we had a property come through, or at least a lead come through. It was a vacant house, completely boarded up. I forget where around town it was, but the seller essentially said, "Yeah, just go over their property and take a look at things." So I swing by this house, and sure enough, it's completely boarded up.
Every good story starts with "Go check out my boarded up house." By the way,
I learned that the hard way, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so, I'm circling the property. At first, I usually just take pictures of the outside. Naturally, it's the first thing you see. So it's in a wooded area, somewhat. I'm sure no one had lived in it in quite a few years. So I finished taking the pictures of the front, the sides, the back. I check out the yard. And one thing that was really weird, there's a window in the back by the kitchen, which is definitely high. I'm about 6 feet tall. And so it was taller than me. So I would say maybe 6.5 feet high. And right below the window, this one didn't have a board on it, and it was slightly ajar. Right below the window was a plastic chair. So I found that to be a little bit weird. Everything else was boarded up other than that window. So, I thought, well, maybe someone's in this property. So I yell in there a few times, "Hey, management, whatever," just to see if I could either hear some movement or someone yelling back. And nothing happens. So I'm like, all right, perfect. Maybe it was someone that was squatting here before and left and is no longer here. So I go to the front and I start taking the board off of the front door, essentially. So I got my drill. I'm on the phone with someone. Actually, Will, funny enough, I was on the phone with Amy. I forget why she called me, but I was literally on the phone with Amy while unboarding the front door. So
did Amy hear you shriek like a girl?
No, she didn't, because it was afterwards that I did. So I unboard the front door. I get the board removed. The door behind it was open. I walk in. I'm still on the phone with Amy. And the setup of the house was kind of odd. You walk into the space. There's nothing there. Then to the right, there's another door that leads to a living room. And then to the left, there's a larger long room that led all the way in the back into the kitchen. So, a lot of these properties, I go through them really quick, and I don't look around too much. A lot of it is all through my phone as I'm taking pictures. So I hang up with Amy, and I come in the front door. I take pictures of all the angles that I need. I go to the right, and then I take pictures of the next room. I go into the middle room, and I start taking pictures of everything. There's a random furnace in there for some reason, but that's beside the point. So I finished doing all that, and as soon as I get to the kitchen, the kitchen's not open to that other room. There's a doorway. As soon as I get to the front of the doorway, and I lift to take a picture with my phone, through the phone, I see a pit bull on the other end that starts growling at me. And so I don't know how I didn't have a bowel movement at that time. I look up. I remember I didn't take a picture of the dog right when I was doing it. I took a picture as I was freaking out. And I don't know if you're ever told, but they say do not run away from dogs. But your natural instinct, you don't really sit there and think I'm just going to stand here like an idiot. I bolted the hell out. So I have a feeling the dog was just letting me know he was there and chose not to attack me or anything. But I ran out the front, shut the door, and the dog didn't chase me, luckily enough. So it appeared there was a squatter there living with his dog, who did not say anything back, of course, when I yelled through the window. And maybe had left for the day and left the dog in there and was going to come back later. But yeah, I mean, telling it maybe doesn't sound as scary, but I nearly crapped my pants.
I'll take the pig over the dog any day.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
That is definitely scary. I can't believe the dog didn't like bark when you were hollering in or anything.
That was the thing. And he didn't say anything as I was rummaging around the house.
Yeah.
He only stood up and like growled at me as I neared the kitchen.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think the dog was probably more scared than I was, and was just giving it a last resort, like, hey, let me let this guy know I'm here. Let me growl at him as he's approaching the kitchen where I'm at. And yeah, man, I saw that, nearly pooped my pants, ran out the front door and shut the door. And we did not buy that house, by the way. But yeah, that was a rather nerve-wracking situation that I was.
Yeah. I'm sure if we all look through like all of our old footage and stuff like that, we can definitely like send in to like scary movies. Like, hey, you can use this footage for your next movie or anything like that. So I know some of the stuff is a little freaky. Is I'm even watching like walkthrough videos. I'm like, okay, I feel a little tingly right now.
Especially basements.
I'm sure you guys have got a good story too, man. You can't go without telling the same. What's a good story for that you or you guys recall?
What's that for us?
Yeah, for you guys, yeah.
The scary or funny or what?
Either one, man. You got to humor us now.
So I think we have a handful of stories that involves like naked people, nudity, like walking into houses where there's inappropriate things going on. That's
could be worse, Alain, Steve.
Ronnie's got a pretty good story about walking into a scenario in a house. But one of the stories that definitely stands out to me is we had this lady. It was like right when I first started working with Brett, and this is Tyler Hazel. If you guys know him, he was our acquisition manager at the time. We had this lady that every time he scheduled an appointment to go to her house, like he would go knock on the door. He's basically like, "Hey, it's Tyler here to see your house," and she was just like, "Sorry, I'm naked. You can't come in right now." And he'd be like, "Well, can you put some clothes on? Like, what's going on? Like, what's good thing now?"
I'm watching a room this time.
It happened like 3 times in a row. Like, she just never get in. He'd like talk to the neighbor one time, and he was just like, "Oh, she won't let you in. She's probably naked." Like, it was just like a thing that people knew and things. That's when it came out. Like, we were like contemplating, like, "Oh, we should get her like a simple wholesaling robe and send it to her, or something like that." And
so the fourth time, Tyler was like, "No, that's okay. I'm naked too."
Yeah. So yeah, but there's a handful of stories like that, which always is crazy. So Ben, what about you, man? You got anything that stands out to you, or any stories like that?
Not so. I mean, interesting. I don't know. Not so funny, but definitely interesting. We get a lead late last year in Zionsville, and you guys know what it's like to get a lead in Zionsville. It's hard just to get a lead in Zionsville, and then they're hard to close too, because not a lot of distressed properties out there. I mean, of course there are some, but not a ton. Well, it turns out this property was mostly vacant land, and a house that needed torn down. And it was 2 separate properties. And the lady that called us about it, we go out there and take a look, and you can just tell she's motivated. And but she wants $400,000, and we're like, there's no way, because it's just vacant land. And there's small lots. They're like, one lot is 3 acres, the other lot's 2 acres. And my acquisition manager, Brian, brings back a contract for both properties. The contract clearly states the 2 addresses, and for $200,000. So she wants 400. Just goes to show asking price doesn't really mean anything. It's all about motivation. He comes back with a contract for both properties for $200,000. So we're leading up. We're getting ready to close, and my acquisition manager was like, she thought that was $200 for each of those properties. And we're like, so she thought we were paying $400 for both. And I'm like, you need to tell her there's no way anybody can do that. I mean, we can't do that. And he's like, I told her clearly that it was $200 for both properties. Then you look at the contract, it clearly states the separate addresses, $200,000 purchase price. And I call her up, and try to like work it out. And I'm like, well, you signed a contract. My acquisition manager is telling me like he was very clear, very transparent. This is 200 for both of these properties. So I call her because we're getting up to closing and she's kind of fighting back. He's like, well, I wanted 400 for both. And I'm just like, well, we can't make that work. And now I'm at the point, I even consulted with Will on this. Do you remember this, Will? I'm like, what would you do in this scenario? And he's like, you know, if she honestly made a mistake, we would let her out, right? And I was like, I emailed title company and I was like, you know, we're gonna have to talk to the sellers because something's going on. And they're like, oh, well, she scheduled the closing for the 200,000. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, was she, you know, not to be cynical, but was she trying to play us on this and pretend that she wanted 200 for both and try to work one over? Or did she really make the mistake or what? So I dig deeper. I'm curious now. Like, I'm like, first she wants 400. Now she's back to only wanting 200 because that's a lot of money, right? And so I dig deeper into the county records and I'm like, who is this seller? And I look and her name is, it's a basketball player's wife, an NBA basketball player's ex-wife. And I dig deeper and it goes back the last sell date. These properties in Zionsville had been sitting vacant since 2004. And the last known owner, if any of you guys are Indiana Pacer fans, was Ron Artest. And
Stop.
yeah, so it was Ron Artest.
Legend.
It was Ron Artest's ex-wife, and so she must have got them in the divorce decree. She must have got him in the divorce, and so I was like, 2004. That's when the malice at the palace happened. That's when the Pacers in Detroit got into a fight, and that's when he sold the properties or quit claim deeded those properties over to his ex-wife, who's now his ex-wife. And I'm like, well, this is kind of making sense now. Like maybe 200,000 to her doesn't really mean anything, you know? So I dig a little bit deeper, do a Google search. Next thing you know, the next night, my wife and I are watching her, our seller, on Real Basketball Wives, NBA style LA. So she had like a reality TV show. And I'm like, my wife and I, we bought that property. And now we still own one of the lots in Zionsville. And it's just kind of cool story that we bought a property that an NBA player used to own.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And Ron Artest out of all NBA players.
Yeah.
You could be making that up and I still wouldn't care. It's such a good story.
Well, the thing is if anybody knows Ron Artest, you guys all know, man, he was a wild card out there. And his ex-wife, she didn't seem to care. She was just, I don't know if she got in the divorce, but she was just happy to get it sold. You could tell the property had been sitting there. I don't even know if she knew she owned it for that long because it had literally been sitting there vacant since 2004, and now it's 2019. So for 15 years, it had just been sitting there.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. So that's good stuff, though. So good old meta world peace.
Meta world peace.
So that's great. Let's kind of dive in. Speaking of that, I talk about like kind of the naked lady that we ran across, and like Ron Artest is obviously a character and stuff like that. Is there any one character that you guys like that stands out to any of you guys from just a deal that you had? I always find it funny, like when I look back through my phone every now and then of like the names that I give people, like after I talk to them, like just like randomness that I like kind of give somebody a nickname, and then like that kind of just sticks in my mind of like, yep, this is the character. I'm going to call this person Bertha because that's who she reminds me of, or whatever it may be. But is there any like certain character that you guys came across or dealt with that just like really just stands out to you guys and in your mind, like I 100% remember like dealing with this person?
Well, not a seller for me, but one of my acquisition managers is a character, and he's been with me. I met him at Syria about 5 years ago, and he came up to me and he's like, right out of Ball State, I want to learn real estate. I'll work for free. And it was just me at the time. And I'm like, all right, you can help me. And he's grown into an acquisition manager. And man, some of the things he wants to keep, you guys know, we go on and we buy these houses and there's all kinds of belongings left behind. Some of the things like he wants to keep are just, I'm like, why do you want that? And we're keeping this lighthearted, but he took an adult toy from a house. Just like, why do you want to take that home? So, I mean, my acquisition manager really is a character and keeps it interesting on the appointments.
Oh yeah, I feel like any of the clean out crews or anything that we use on stuff, like every time I go go visit them or know them or anything like that, like every time I go to their house, like they have like way more stuff from some of the clean outs that they've got the last time I was there. So.
And there's all kinds of crazy things that get left behind at these houses.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, even something like that. Like, what's like? Is there something like? Did you guys ever like bought a house or like wholesale a house and there was like something valuable in it that you guys like came out on the other end and like you were able to like sell it and make some money off any of that stuff?
Man, it's funny you say that. We just wholesaled a really big house in in Heron Morton, downtown Indianapolis, like a 5,000 square foot monstrosity. And this house had not been entered into in, I'm not kidding you, probably 20 years. I mean, there was just stuff, dust everywhere. And it wasn't a hoarder situation. It wasn't, just useless bags of food and garbage. And it was someone who cared a lot about opera music and classical music and news. And so this house was built in 1904, come to find out. And we found like diaries and books of every play the original owner had seen since 1904. And it was pages and pages and pages of every play they'd seen. So anyway, and so we went through and tracked down the original owner. I live in Heron Morton. I love that neighborhood and I love the history behind it. And so we went through and tracked down the original owner and gave this to them. And they were super pumped up because it was their, Jesus. The guy that originally had the house built, he'd be 120 years old or however old he'd be, right? So at least. So for their family to get that and kind of experience like part of their ancestry that still lived in this house, they had no clue was still there, was really, really cool. And on top of that, there was like 30 years of consecutive months of Time magazines. And it's just crazy. Not necessarily valuable, I don't think, but valuable to somebody, if that makes any sense. So I'm a history buff, and I thought that was pretty cool to return a piece of history to someone that otherwise would have never known it existed. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Wow.
From 1904, dude, over 100 years. That's pretty cool.
It was crazy. I joked with myself about how bad our vocabulary is now because you don't realize how bad your vocabulary is till you read someone that was writing stuff in 1905, and they have much bigger words than you and I use in text message. Alain, we'll leave it there.
Yeah. No emojis back then.
No emojis, no sir.
That's cool. So, Alain, will anything stand out to you guys? Just like kind of a character, like something in a house that you guys found that you're just like, wow, how did somebody leave this here, or just somebody that you kind of came across? You're like, wow, that person was interesting.
No, honestly, I mean, go ahead, Will. Sorry.
No, you're right. I was just gonna say I was buying another house. I can't remember what wholesaler it was, but we were buying another house from a wholesaler. This is in the winter time, so it's like 6:30 at night. I went to go check it out, make sure, I was like, okay, get the email. I ran over there. It was a pretty good deal. And so I kind of pull up and it's dusk, almost dark, but they got one of those mannequin heads that are in the window. As you're driving up to it, I'm like, oh shoot.
We were on that deal, I remember.
And I'm like, oh my, that's creepy. All right. So I'm like, it's a mannequin head. It's not a person. I'm like, all right, it's creepy, all right, whatever, so, it's not a bad neighborhood. So I'm not feeling too weirded out. So I open the door. I'm going in the side door. And when you go in the side door, you go straight down into the basement. It's one of those houses. So up the side door, I turn on the light and there's a coffin. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, I'm walking around. It's like sweet grandma's house, but it's like, it smells like grandma, looks like grandma. Like, it's got a coffin down there. So anyway, so I check it out. I'm like, that's weird. Like the wholesaler doesn't say anything about it. No pictures, and I'm like, I wonder what's in there, if anything, But and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And so I called the guy. We ended up buying the house, and I was like, I got to make sure I tell my clean out guys, about this. And so which I don't, I forget. I'm just like, yeah, we'll clean it. We need this house cleaned out. What's funny is the clean out guys just clean out the house and don't even ask any questions. So I never got paid for my clean out guys. They never asked, hey, there's a coffin down here, nothing, just tossed it. So that was probably the first time I'd seen a coffin. It was a little creepy. I'm not sure which was creepier, the coffin being left there or the guys just tossing it. But I always
aren't coffins expensive?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Coffins are a pretty penny, I think.
To open that thing up and know that it hadn't been used, I'm thinking like, how many pranks we could play on guys, I mean, I can call the wholesaler, hey, I want 10 grand for this house. They'd be running out to go look at it, I'm not going to pop out of that thing 100 times. So it was, I didn't have as much fun as I should have.
Yeah, you should have kept it. That's for sure.
That's crazy. So. Alain, how about you, man?
We don't have anything like that where, it's been something like super valuable. Well, I mean, I lied. We never bought it, but there was a property that it was a commercial property, super messed up, that had like an older Mustang, not in mint condition or anything, but that would have been cool to buy and then obviously get the car as well. For me, it's been mainly, if it's interesting when it comes to inside of a house, like Clay was saying, more of like on the hoarder situation. So just this year, I've been to like 3 that have been pretty awful, to the point where you're literally walking on like 5 feet of stuff. You're like kneeling down because like the roof is right here, the ceiling is about to, you're pretty much touching the ceiling at that point. So I would say that's mainly it for me. Hoarder houses, there's been a fire one that we wholesaled on Union Street. I think that was near Bates Hendricks. That actually City Place, like Josh Compton and them, they'll flip from time to time. And what I liked about that project, well, actually the first thing that was kind of creepy was that an individual died in there in the fire. It was an older gentleman that I guess couldn't move very well. And I think he just suffocated to death in the property at the time. But he was also a hoarder. So that property was not only a fire burn property, but also a hoarder house. So yeah, it's been more of those scenarios. That property in particular was just really cool to see something you wholesale and then a finished product. The finished product was like incredible. So I always like that deal for that type of reason. But yeah, nothing expensive that we've run across. And honestly, I haven't really had like an interesting character, or at least someone that's been super memorable in what I've been doing.
Yeah. That's cool. How about let's do a little like best deal, worst deal kind of thing. So let's kind of run through here and kind of give us you have an idea of what, or what that best deal was for you, and then like kind of follow it up with maybe what your worst deal was, that deal that was kind of always stick to you and, you kick yourself for still today or whatever. So Ben, how about you, man? Let's start with you.
Yeah. Best deal has been, off the top of my head, I think this is accurate. It was a 10-unit apartment on just south of 38th, maybe like 30th and Meridian or 34th and Meridian. And I'm just going to go best and worst based off profit. So that was like a $75,000 profit, just wholesale, a 10-unit apartment. I actually, I had to close on that one and hold on to it. I was contemplating keeping it, and I held it for a month, and a month was way too long. I mean, just the tenant management of that thing was a nightmare. I remember I was on vacation with my family, and it had a lot of deferred maintenance. So yeah.
Ben said it was one of those big things on Meridian. It was actually on Meridian Street.
It was actually on Meridian. It was, I think we bought it for around, I want to say $290 and sold it for like $70 or $380. So I think it netted out to like around $75,000. Worst deal, I mean, Muncie gets me every time. Muncie gets me every time. I don't know if Well, I went to Ball State, and my acquisition, one of my acquisition managers went to Ball State, so he looks just for excuses to go to Muncie to reminisce about his college days. I don't know. I think we lost like I want to say 18,000 on a wholesale. So, yeah, those are
Okay.
my best and worst.
We all have this.
Yeah.
Clay, how about you, man?
I don't even want to talk about my worst. I'll just talk about my best. My best deal was just like Ben's. It was an apartment deal. Again, I live downtown, so I love downtown. At the time, it was an 8-unit building on 21st in Pennsylvania, close to downtown in Heron Morton, ironically. And we cleared a little over $200,000 on that deal.
Holy moly.
That was in 2018. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. It was a seller who was actually a super well-to-do seller, and that's I when I'm talking to people who are wholesaling or looking to wholesale, motivated means different things to different people. You don't have to be financially distressed to be motivated. This guy was trying to find the right cash at the right time to send his daughter to college, and so we gave him money in 3 days, and held on to it for a week or two. And then we bought it for $500 and sold it for $710 or $715. The next week or two. So that was my best deal. And the best part is our client, our buyer, had it, she did a little bit of rehab and then had it reappraised, I guess, whatever that is, 6, 7, 8 months later, and it appraised for 1.2. So she made a killing. Nice. I made good money, and everyone, everyone was excited. So that's the best deal. My worst deal, bar none, was my foray into Fountain Square. I think everyone has to earn their stripes and act like a real estate magnate when they're doing Fountain Square. So I bought 1145 Linden Street and tried to flip a $130,000 rehab deal, and 130 turned into like 180 in 9 months of rehab really quick. So I think I lost like 60 grand on that deal. And the worst part is I borrowed hard money to do it, and then it just took forever, right? So that was not underwritten very well at all. We have learned from then, but that's my best was a little over 200. My worst was about 60K in the red.
So it's everybody that's getting into wholesaling, you'll realize, you talk to wholesalers who've been doing it for a while. We all have bad deals. We all are in this spot. So it's going to happen from time to time. So Alain, how about you, man?
Our best deal is actually super similar to Ben's. It was honestly, so this was like fresh into things. It was kind of wild. Clay, you probably know this deal, and actually probably a few guys in here know this deal. Mainly for Clay because it's in the general vicinity. This apartment complex is at the corner of Fall Creek and 30th. And,
yeah, man, it's my backyard.
And I should say this X apartment complex. So right at that
further down, yeah.
Now a vacant lot.
Yeah.
You could see like the gas station behind it. So that was literally like a few months into, Bob and I partnering up, and the story on that one. So that apartment was 2-story, if I recall correctly. It was either 2 or 3 stories. I don't know how many units. I think it was around 15 to 20. Entirely gutted. There was nothing inside. Absolutely nothing. Just the studs. Everything was opened up. And so, running numbers at the time, and it's too difficult, right? When you look at a monstrosity like that, the outside needs everything. It's a brick building, probably from like the early 1900s. It's way too difficult to run numbers accurately, and especially when you're starting out, even more so, right? The situation was, I guess some gentleman from Chicago had bought that with his business partner. And for some reason, they bought that like forever ago and wanted to do something, but they ran a construction company in Chicago, and they were just way too busy with whatever they had going on. And again, like Clay was saying, motivation is different from different people. And so I distinctly remember Bob and I trying to, at least to some degree, get a general idea of how much this thing was going to cost to fix up. And so we ran some math or whatnot, and we end up coming to I think it was 45 grand for that thing.
Shut up.
Yeah, it was $45,000.
Jesus.
And so, Bob and I are talking, I'm like, 45. I'm like, why don't we just offer him 18, see what happens? So I offer the guy $18,000 for that property, and we bought it for 18, and we moved it, I think, for like 90 something. In the hindsight, I mean, we would have kept that,
Right.
and then we would probably undersold it because Bob said there was just a ton of interest on that property, like right away. So yeah, our best deal, I think that came out to be like 72 or 73, and within it was maybe a few months, I saw like some crews out there taking it down. So yeah, now if you drive by Fall Creek and 30th, if you're going south from Fall Creek to the right, there's an empty lot and you can see the gas station behind it. And there used to be a gigantic building there.
Hey, Brian, for your audience, I feel, sorry to interrupt you, Alain, I feel obligated to share this. I mean, I live 5 blocks from that, what the deal Alain's talking about. And I've told you guys about 2 deals that are like a 9-iron from my house, right? So for people that are just getting started or even more established people, you drive past these houses all the time. There are deals all around you. And I would encourage anyone that you've got to stop and talk to people. You've got to send letters. You got to make the call, because just because we do a lot of business doesn't mean that we're touching everybody. It's impossible, you know?
Well, we had that conversation before we all jumped on here. Like, hey, yeah. I think like you asked, like how many times, like what's the percentage of us running into each other? And like we all were like, we're pretty sure like it's less than 30% of if I'm going after a deal that I'm going to run into one of you guys. So like there's just a ton of deals out there in Indianapolis because it is such a great market for whatever type of investing you're doing. So if you're a wholesaler, you can find deals, even though we're all doing hundreds of deals a year. Like you can find deals before we can get to them. I mean, it's definitely possible in Indianapolis. So, but a lot of that comes down to just driving around, knowing what's going on in the city and things like that. So that's a really good point, Clay.
And when in doubt, just offer 18 grand for an apartment complex and you're good.
So there you go. We could probably all do it like a scenario too on like what property should we have kept? Like, are we like sad that we wholesaled? Like we should.
No, we're not. We're not talking about that. That is definitely not something we're even bringing up.
So, all right, Alain, what's that worst deal, man? It still sticks with you.
Honestly, I think we might have broken even on a couple, but for us, since we don't flip, right? So Clay scenario, we wouldn't really run into. And unlike you guys, Brian, where Simple Wholesaling takes down most of their things, if not all, we're either assigning or double closing. So we're pretty conservative on numbers. So if we haven't really lost money on a wholesale deal, I would say for us, our worst deals are the ones that we don't contract and then you see go out. So
it's probably the one we partnered with you on, Alain.
Which one? Oh yeah, never mind.
It's probably the worst deal.
It has that
yeah, that one.
I think we made 500 each.
Okay, well there we go. At least it was still in the group. Yeah, that's the one we listed. Did that sell?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's we couldn't find a buyer to save our lives, and then my disposition manager Travis is flipping it right now.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
Me and Bob were talking about it. We're like, man, what should we do here? And we had it listed forever, and I'm like, my disposition manager, I don't know what's wrong with him. He's crazy. You ask me, he's crazy, but he wants to flip a house in Elwood. He offered us like $2K above what we went for, and then you factor in the closing costs, and then we split it 50-50 on a joint venture. So
it was probably because there was a ton of sex toys in there. He was like, "Yeah, I definitely gotta have this one."
I'm interested to see how he does on that, but I don't know. Maybe is that? I mean, you said you don't have money, but we didn't make much on that one.
No, like I said, I think we've come like even on a couple. Maybe lost like 500 on a few, but other than that, yeah, I would say, and that losing $500, honestly, to me, doesn't hurt as much as not getting a deal under contract and then seeing it blasted out.
Yeah,
that sucks more for me personally. I feel like that hits home a lot more.
Yeah,
especially if it's like a deal that you've been working for like 6 months to a year. You know. Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will.
That's
it for me.
So, Will, how about you, man? Is there what's best deal, worst deal for you, man?
The pit one for sure.
What's that? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I go back to the best deal is always like your first deal, right? Like I think we take for granted we've all grown some pretty good sized businesses, and 20-30 grand comes in and you don't really think much about it because you got so many expenses coming on the back end like you did when you first started, for sure. And so you don't I just remember the first time. I mean, we sat in the house. I negotiated for hours, right? And then I went back and trying to get buyers through, and there's fleas in the house, and you're sitting there talking to the seller. And this is back, like, my wife only went on one appointment with me, and this is one of our first ones. And she went there, and I kept like slapping my leg because I like the fleas. I didn't realize what fleas were. I'm like, what the man? I'm like itching. I'm like, something's bothering me in here, And she's like, it's fleas. Just quit making it so noticeable, Like, and Raymond was his name, and it was like I don't know what we cleared on it. It was like a $5,000, $4,000, $5,000 assignment fee, and it literally felt like, man, I can do this. Like, it was just a freedom that you had, and you did it. And it was a horrible, we're trying to get this guy out and this is back when it was occupied. Like, people buy houses. Like, I think in some ways the new wholesalers and even us are a little bit spoiled. You can sell houses with tenants in them. You can sell houses with clauses that they'll be out in 40. You couldn't do that 6 years ago. Like, the house had to be vacant, and it was a lot of work sometimes to get those guys out vacant. There was just, and so we had to do all that. So I think it still goes back to, if anybody new that's watching this, like, you don't forget that, like, the accomplishment and the encouragement. And I probably felt more pride and more excitement when we went out to eat, like, for Mexican, when that house closed. It was like I spent more on my bar and food bill than I probably made on the dadgum thing, and then now you get like a $30,000 assignment. You're just like, you become numb to it, a little bit.
Really do.
And so, I would say, we haven't had too many big losses. We lost $20,000 on a deal recently where we sold a house, and it was in a tax sale, which we knew. It was in a tax sale, so we bought it, and it ended up being on 2 lots. And we bought one of the lots. The house ended up being on 2 lots. Well, we bought the house with 1 lot, and the other lot got sold in the tax sale that had half the house on it.
Wow.
And our investors put a ton of money into it, and they were selling it for like 2 something. And basically, this guy bought it in a tax sale, knew exactly what he was doing, and holding these guys hostage. Then they kind of called us, and I called that guy up, and and anyways, back and forth, and we ended up settling on it. Like, they were in a tough spot because this guy was just, even legally, he wouldn't have got what he wanted, but it was all about leverage, right? So he's kind of a dirty guy, in my opinion. Was taking advantage of him, and so we wrote a check for $20,000, and to get them out of it, and negotiated with the guy and cleared it all up so these people could sell their house. So that's the other side. Like, I think obviously, the more deals we all do, you're exposed to some liability in this business,
Yeah.
And, did we have to do that legally? Maybe not. We could have drawn it out and took it to court, and we just felt like it was the right thing to do. We didn't know any better, right? The seller didn't disclose to us. The seller is just kind of a weird deal. The seller didn't even know he owned, that there was 2 lots, and it's a big cluster, and nobody caught it. The house, when you look it up on Realist, it says it has the parcel number and the address to it, and that's just kind of what we tagged with. And, no one did a land survey, but we did the right thing. We felt like, so that was a tough one, to write a check for $20,000, and that was right during the trap, right? Not when at a time you just feel like writing checks for $20,000 on a deal you did a year ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was my worst deal, but it was definitely the biggest loss we've taken. But I felt like we walked away, we did the right thing, and you hopefully some good comes swing back for you on that.
Yeah. So I think it's a big thing for everybody, like, going throughout this business of the line, talking about like, hey, we might have to give up some earnest money and break even on a deal, but that's worth it to keep your reputation, to try the deal, and things like that, and just doing the right thing when you could have fought it probably, or whatever happens, but it comes down to your reputation and just doing the right thing for a lot of people. And it's not about selling one house; it's about selling 10, 20 houses to all your investors and stuff. So that's cool. So yeah, I know one of our work stories that definitely stuck out to me. We actually, so I don't know if you guys have run into this, is just like kind of just a little bit of stuff that we kind of looked over and didn't necessarily dive in too deeply, but basically over, kind of that Northeast Wood area over on the east side, there's a 34th Street and a 34th Place. So we literally bought a house thinking that it was a different house and went through everything like that. And it's just very easy. Like, we figured out, I was like, oh man, no, why did we do this? Like, how did we not see this? How did we not catch it? But yeah, so we literally bought a house thinking it was another house and lost like, I think 13 on it. Like I think we held it for a year and like just continuing with it or anything like that. And we finally just said, whatever, we'll just cut our losses and here's 13 grand and just let it go. So that was interesting. We also had another one where this was Brett told me this story. He bought a house one time and basically went to look at the house the next day. And as he was driving up to the house, all he could smell was he could just smell something burnt. And never knew what it was. And by the time we got to the house, like it's burnt down to the ground. So didn't have insurance yet on it or anything like that. You got to get insurance like right away and this kind of things. But yeah, so that's always tough. But I go back to like one of my best deals. I think is kind of comes back to Will was talking about like that first deal that you remember. Like I remember like my first deal that was like just no nonsense, like just a perfect deal. Like picked up a property in Fountain Square for like 25 grand, sold it like within 2 days for like 70. And it was just boom, boom, boom. Like nothing, everything happened within like 5 days, like no issues, no problem, cash in, cash out, like perfect. And I think we made like 43 on that one. That's a deal that I always like consider like one of my best deals just because it was flawless, like perfect with it, no issues at all, and things like that. So I love deals like that where there's no issues because as you guys know, there's issues with about 85% of the houses when it comes to title stuff or just any random stuff that pops up and things like that. So, so that's cool. Let's. I don't want to keep you guys for too long, so we got a couple more minutes left. But let's kind of finish this off. But maybe like if you can share what is some advice that you have for just a new wholesaler, new investor, or it could be something that either somebody told you. Or just something that maybe you've learned throughout just kind of the stories and things that you've done, your expertise in the business. So what's like kind of one thing that stands out to you of like you just give advice to for just a new wholesaler or investor that's coming up and looking to do what we do. So Will, let's start with you, man.
I think for me, I actually heard this today, and I don't remember where I heard it from, but it resonated with me, right? Like there's a point where you're at, and there's a point where you want to be, right? We all have your goal, and that in between can feel like failure when you're trying to get to where you want to be, and it's not. And to remember that it's growth, and it really is growth, and it can feel like failure a lot of times, because you come against roadblocks and you come against obstacles of what you want to do, and there's all these distractions, right? I mean, social media is great, Facebook's great, but you start seeing what other people have, and it's a distraction. You start thinking like, the guy's got it all, man. Look at him, Clay just did $200,000 deal. Like we can't even get a, but you start thinking that way, right? And so I think, for me is just remember that, right now, you're at one place, you want to get to another, and there in the middle is just remember that's growth, and it will feel like failure, and it'll hurt, it'll sting, but you got to just keep being persistent. I think I was very fortunate, and maybe it's this way now with some of the newer guys, like everybody that's on here, like we all ran around together. Clay mentioned he started, I think, in 14. We started in 14 as well. That's when I started this company. I know Ben was close to around there. Like, we all came up the channels fairly similar, right? And we all kind of grew at a fairly decent pace. And, we've kind of branched off to some different exits and stuff. But, get around those group of guys and really use them for motivation, but don't idolize them or want what they want. I mean, that's you got to decide that for yourself. But use those guys to kind of push. And Ben and Clay and Alain, we all push each other. I hope we do. It's all competition. Definitely Brett was simple. Like, you need to be looking at those guys. Like, man, we want to continue to grow and we want to continue to get where we need to be. But Alain's a perfect example where he didn't want to be. I mean, he could be, closer to our size and our teams. They went down a different road, and that's just knowing your lane, of knowing like, hey, me and Bob don't want that. Like, we like what we have over here. We don't necessarily want to grow a team, and you don't have to. You don't have to feel like you follow the road. So that'd be my biggest thing is that middle part is tough. I will tell you that. I feel like I'm always in it. We're in it right now. That middle part is tough, but it's growth. It's not failure.
No, man, thanks for that. That was great. So, Alain, how about you, bud?
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess to piggyback and not go too long on it, and for practicality's sake, I would say definitely consistency is stick to it is going to be the biggest thing, I think, at the end of the day. Not only to what you're doing, what you're learning and applying and taking action, but especially, I mean, let's say in the business of wholesaling, and you hear this oftentimes, and it's definitely the case. Persistence in marketing, which is honestly the biggest thing about this. We're really marketers at the end of the day, more so than I guess sellers of real estate. But yeah, our biggest channel is marketing. The biggest important piece is marketing. So staying consistent with that, and then of large importance is definitely follow up. So staying consistent with follow up, making sure that you have things in place where you can keep the follow up consistent and touch base with people. I mean, you could ask any of these guys, and I'm sure there's been deals I have taken them a year plus to close. I've definitely been there over a year to close a deal, and it happens. When you're first starting in and you don't get it, then it's hard to understand. You think that after a phone call, oh, they said no, and like that's it. At least I went through that at the beginning, right? Until I learned. Same with hearing about people bringing money to close on a deal, and you're like, that's never going to happen. No one's going to pay me to buy their house. But you go through that experience, and you're like, my God, yeah, I guess it is a thing. So, yeah, I'd say consistency in the marketing and in the follow up is definitely key.
Yes, very true, very true. Good points. Ben, how about you, man? Any just words of advice or maybe advice that you got to help you out?
I'll just share something I think, practical. Any new investor or especially new wholesaler can follow is just know your numbers. And the reason I say that is like all of us here are buyers. Like if you're a new wholesaler and you don't know your numbers, you need help with your numbers, any one of us in here can help you. And don't be scared to reach out to somebody more experienced than you out of worry that, oh, maybe they're going to steal the deal from me, or maybe if it's your deal and your lead and you brought it to us, we want you to get paid. But the problem I see so much in our industry is just a lot of, and it happens with a lot of newer investors. It's like they're, like Will said, his best deal ever was the first deal he did. And it's because it's hard. It's the hardest deal. I mean, I would agree with that too. If I'm not going by numbers, my best deal ever was my first deal, because I was like, it gives you permission to go forward. And so, but what I see so much in our industry is you got a lot of newer bird dogs, wholesalers, that they're so thirsty to do a deal. And it's like they take the deal and they try to turn it into a deal, and people are marketing deals that aren't deals, nowhere close. And a lot of investors, a lot of your buyers that you're sending those deals to are going to get what I call deal fatigue from you, because they're going to that email is going to come through and they're just going to delete it. And if you're not sure on the numbers, or you don't understand the underwriting of a deal, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of this business, is if you can't underwrite a property, you can't do a deal unless you leverage somebody more experienced than you, give them an opportunity to joint venture with you and have them help you with the numbers. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of people out here, especially in the industry, in the market, just people willing to help, people that have the expertise behind them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, good point. So, Clay, about you, man?
I'm sitting here. These guys are talking, trying to figure out a way to add value other than the way they already did. And I guess I'll answer with a story. I was in 2014. and I was out at a house in Garfield Park area. I remember walking up to the appointment, and I was, kind of carrying my little clipboard, and I was kind of trembling a little bit because I had to talk to a seller. Right, it was a big deal. I had to go talk to this seller, and this big bad wholesaler, Will Hull, was at the appointment before I was. And I remember walking up, and I was like, "Well, how am I gonna now? What? How am I gonna do this? Because Will's already been there, right?" And well, I don't know if you remember this at all, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And we didn't get the deal. I think he probably got it, but I learned how. Maybe cooperative is the wrong word, but just how genuine most people in this industry are. And it seems competitive because it is. And it seems like we butt heads sometimes because we probably do. I mean, we all take deals from each other here and there. But at the end of the day, my 2 cents to anyone that's looking to invest or wholesale would be to remain consistent. That's what Alain said, and to find what you're good at. You're going to get punched in the face. You're going to lose deals. You're going to have someone lie to you. You're going to get sued. There's a whole line of things that's going to happen to you. And if you're not prepared to jump into that with both feet, then I would encourage you to maybe pursue other opportunities. But, there's a reason I don't pursue a lot of the same marketing strategies Ben does or Brian does. It's because I'm not good at that stuff. They are. Let them have it, right? And I would encourage anyone to find what they're good at, find what they like, and to remain consistent in that. There's way too much opportunity in this industry to not succeed if you stick to that long enough. My 2 cents.
So no, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that. That's so important. Just stick with what you're good at. If that's whatever certain types of marketing it is, and just kind of go back to what Bill said, of like. Don't get distracted by other things. Stick with what you're good at. And it's so important. And some of my advice, you guys kind of spoke to this as well, is there's people out here that are helping. And hopefully anybody that's watching this or anybody that does watch this in the future, anything like that, you're realizing that even though we are competitors and we, can, battle each other over deals and stuff like that, it's a community. It's about a community, and it's about helping each other out, using people as resources, not as a rival or a villain or anything like that. It's about working out with each other, or helping each other out, working with each other, and you're going to get a lot further in this business by doing things like that. And then one other story I kind of want to share too, and it kind of just popped up in my mind. Will, I don't know if you were at this meeting at our mastermind or something, but I remember at our mastermind meeting, Jason Medley stood up on the stage one time, and basically there's 150 of the top investors in the nation in this room. And he stands up, he just said, "Hey, I'm going to do a quick survey. You guys just raise your hand if this applies to you." And he just like, raise your hand if you were a valedictorian. Nobody in the room raised their hand. Raise your hand if you were a salutatorian. Nobody in the room raised their hand. Like, raise your hand if you were in the top 5. Nobody in the room raised their hand. And like top 10, I think a few of us did and things like that. But the point was that there are people that are making just a killing, doing amazing things in this industry, doing amazing things nationwide, just huge businesses and things like that. And they weren't the smartest people in school. They weren't the people that were like doing, those type of people in school and things like that. But it just comes down to now in their industry, they figured out what they're good at, what they're strong at, what their strengths are. And that's what they're educating themselves on. That's where they're pushing themselves. That's where they're moving forward within what they want to do. And that's made all the difference in the world for them. So I think that's really important. It just kind of popped up in my head as we're kind of just wrapping up here and stuff like that. So any last words of wisdom or anything else that you guys want to share before we get out of here? So awesome stuff, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on here. And if you guys actually, let's do this real quick, if you guys don't mind. If you have any questions or want to reach out to any of these guys, I know you can find them on Facebook, but if you guys want to share your email address real quick, or maybe the best way to get a hold of you, or anything like that, if somebody wants to reach out to you, Clay, what's the best way to reach there to get in touch with you, man?
Nice and easy, baby. Clay, CLAY, at MidwestCashOffer.com. I'm the most accessible dude in the world. Give me a call. Give me a shout. We'll talk.
Awesome. Ben?
Ben at benbuysindyhouses.com.
Awesome. Alain?
You can find me on Facebook, or my business email is Alain. I don't know if my name's popping up there on the screen for people, but ALAIN at Indy.investments with an S at the end, plural. No .com or .anything afterwards. Alain at Indy.investments.
Nice. And Will?
You can get a hold of me at Amy at newparadox.com. AMIE at newparadox.com.
That ain't you, homie. That ain't you. That ain't you.
The only one that's in his email. Baller.
Hey,
Hold on. Let me give out Will's phone number real quick.
So awesome stuff. Awesome
Anybody
stuff. So,
call me.
thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you guys.
We'll
And
do
thank you
Paradox
everybody that's tuning in. Reach out if you have any questions or need anything from us. More than happy to help. So thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you having us on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See you, fellas.
See you guys.